Creative writing is a powerful tool in telling a story. It helps our social and individual growth and is one of the most important skills we can ever learn. It stretches the imagination and offers a wonderful outlet for self-expression. So, what is creative writing? It is every form of narrative writing, from poetry to feature articles in newspapers to novels. The list is endless. Simply put, it is anything that is not academic and technical. Here's how to write a creative essay in 4 easy steps. Step number 1. To write a creative essay, choose your subject. When choosing a subject, pick something you and others will find interesting. It does not have to be a subject that you know well, in which case, what do? Step number 2. Research the background. All good writers research the background for their essay, story, novel, etc. If you need to, go talk to people who know, the authorities on the subject. Ask questions and learn more about the subject matter. Take some time to think through your topic. Look at it from different perspectives. Write down all your thoughts on the subject. Relevant or random, it doesn't matter. Just list them down. You can sift through it later to decide what you want. Step number 3. Draw up a plan for the essay. Write down the how, what, when, where, and who for the essay. This will guide you and keep you on track so you don't go down a meandering path. After this, it is time to flesh out the how, what, when, where, and who questions to add content to the story. Step number 4. Write the essay. Once you have the first 3 steps in place, start writing the story. Use your outline and start with the introduction. In the introduction, create the scenario to draw your reader's attention. Describe the place, the time, and background. Be fun and engaging so your readers will want to know more. Next is the body of the essay. This is where you develop the plot of the essay. It can be just 1 paragraph for a short story or several paragraphs if the story is longer. Showcase 1 main idea in each paragraph. Develop the story in a smooth and fluid way. Don't be choppy. Flow from 1 paragraph to another. How do we make the story flow? Transitions can be words like yet, and, but, and so on. They are useful and seamlessly move from 1 idea to another. Transitions are usually used in the middle of a sentence, but they can be used in the beginning to emphasize a point. I just did that. I used but in the beginning of a sentence when it is usually used in the middle. But in the beginning will emphasize the content of a sentence following the but and gives continuity through the thought process in the previous sentence. Other common transitions we use are words like however, also, and therefore. Transitions are important, but be careful not to overuse them in your essay. There are many more transition words, and I'll get into them more fully in another video. Finally, now there's a transition for you. We come to the conclusion of the creative essay. The conclusion is where the whole plot comes together to tidy up the story or not. That depends on you, the author, on how you want the story to end. It can be neat and tidy, like a happily ever after, like a fairy tale ending, or it can be a cliffhanger where the ending is left shrouded in suspense. The ending or conclusion of your essay is important, so don't rush it or end it abruptly. It must leave a strong enough impact to stay in the reader's mind after reading it. Now that your creative essay is done, check it thoroughly for spelling and grammatical errors. Change whatever does not read right or flow well. Think about the effect that the essay will have on the reader. Ask someone else to proofread it for you. Very often, We miss errors in our own writing that others will pick up. Once your essay is checked, proofread, corrected, and checked again, it's done. It's as simple as that. I hope you found these tips useful. If you know someone who needs help with creative writing, send them a link to this video. Meanwhile, give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and check out my website, singlishtoenglish.com. Happy writing, and see you next time.
There are really 5 elements in any short story: setting, characterization, plot, theme, and point of view. We will be reviewing each of these individually, and remember, you need to note the definitions on your graphic organizer, and you can pause at any time. The first element we're going to discuss is setting. Setting tells the reader where and when the story takes place. For example, the setting of The Lion King would be the African savannah, probably present day, whereas the setting for Hunger Games is America, but a long time in the future. So setting really has a time and a place. If you were talking about the setting for Little House on the Prairie, that would have been in the 1800s in the United States. The second element we're going to discuss is characterization. Characterization is the creation of imaginary people who appear to be real to the reader. The author makes the characters real to the reader through several different methods, which we'll discuss more on another day. But it really is a way of making the characters come alive, either through how they're speaking, what they're doing, what they look like, that sort of thing. The writer gives information about the characters in the story to make them come alive and make the story more interesting. The third element we're going to be discussing is plot. Plot is really a series of events in which the writer reveals what is happening, to whom, and why. So the plot is really the little events in the story that lead up to make the story. We're going to discuss more about plot in a little while. Theme. Theme is often one of the most difficult of the elements to understand. It is the message that the writer intends to communicate by telling the story. For example, Beauty and the Beast. The theme might very well have been, don't judge a book by its cover. It's different from the topic. The topic of Beauty and the Beast is there is a lovely young woman who ends up falling in love with a beast. That's the topic. The message that the author of Beauty and the Beast is trying to convey is don't judge a book by its cover. Themes can't really be expressed in one word. So a theme wouldn't just be courage, but it might be courage will help you in all situations, or courage will help you in difficult situations. So the theme, like I said, is one of the most difficult elements in a book or any kind of story. A theme of Toy Story, for instance, might be that friendship can conquer all things. So we will be discussing theme at length as we go through all of our stories. And the last element is point of view. It's the position of the narrator of the story and what the writer sees from that vantage point. For instance, it could be a first-person story where it's written from the perspective of I. I went to the store. I picked up a sandwich. That's first person. Or it could be from the perspective of third person. He went to the store. He picked up a sandwich. He fell on his way out the door. That really actually is important, what point of view it's written from, because the author can reveal information or hold information back based on that point of view. And it really is a device that the authors can use to really make the story more interesting. So it's easy to identify, it's easy to tell which one is which, but it's not quite as easy to figure out why an author would use one or another. So to recap, the 5 elements of a short story are setting, the time, the where and the when of the story; characterization, how the author makes the characters come alive; plot, which is the series of events that the characters go through; theme, which is the message of the story, or sometimes it's a moral; point of view, the way the story is told, whether it's told from the first person, I or me, or third person, he or she. These 5 elements make up the short story. However, one of the elements, plot, has some elements of its own. Plot in particular has some pieces to it as well that we will be learning about and going into more detail about this year.
There are 3 different skills you will need in the test: skimming, scanning, and reading in detail. Skimming means looking quickly at the passage to get a general idea of what it's about. Scanning means looking at the passage for specific information. Reading in detail requires you to carefully read the section of the passage you are looking for the answer in. Here are some common situations in which you have probably already used these skills. You might skim a newspaper article to see if you think it is interesting enough to read. If you were looking for a telephone number in a directory, you would scan, looking for the specific name or number you need. If you are assembling a complicated product, you would need to read the instruction manual carefully to make sure you understand all the details of what you have to do. Skimming and scanning skills will help you find the right section of the reading passage to answer the question. Most questions will then require you to read the section you have found in detail in order to get the correct answer. You should not try to read the entire passage in detail, or you will run out of time.
Detail questions, the most straightforward question type you'll encounter in this section. Detail questions are relatively easy because the answer is always in the passage. Now let's look at the most effective way to approach them on test day. Detail questions ask about specific points in the passage. They refer to specific lines or sentences. To answer them effectively, you must find support in the passage for your answer choice. You should literally be able to put your finger on the answer in the passage. For long passages, note the location of key details on your passage map. This will save you valuable time on detail questions that don't contain line references. While the answer will be right there in the passage, it will not normally be a word-for-word match to the correct answer choice. It will often use words that are similar. Keep in mind that the other 4 answers may not be obviously incorrect. Most will also include details that come from the passage. They'll just have nothing to do with the detail in question. Because the answer will always be in the passage, you must be able to locate the detail specified in the question within the passage. Otherwise, you risk being tricked by an incorrect answer choice. You should always read the italicized blurb preceding each passage. It describes the passage, and it sometimes will answer a question directly. Don't let long passages intimidate you. Read for the author's overall meaning. You can always go back to find the correct answer. Remember, don't read for detail, but for sweeping themes. You should only take note of the location of key details, and not the details themselves. With sufficient practice, you'll develop a better sense of how to quickly locate particular details within the passage. Now it's time for you to practice answering some detail questions in guided practice.
You hear the word function. Well, on test day, function questions will ask you to determine what the author's trying to accomplish in a specific part of the passage. Function questions account for a lot of points, so it's important to master them. They also tend to be one of the most difficult questions because you have to try to think like the author. As always, the Kaplan method for reading comp will help you tackle function questions. First, actively read the passage, taking notes as you go. Remember, the why is more important than the what, and keep straight who said what. Second, examine the question stem, looking for clues. The answer is always in the passage. Third, predict the answer and select the choice that matches your prediction. Let's look at how to address them so you can be sure to answer them correctly. Function questions ask about the function of a word, sentence, detail, quote, punctuation, or paragraph. They're easy to identify because their structure is distinctive and their phrasing is precise. You'll see something like, the author does blank in order to. The phrase blank serves to. The placement of blank in quotation marks is meant to. The first step in answering them is to read and map the passage. As you do this, remember that why is more important than what. Also, keep your map focused on the main idea or purpose of each paragraph rather than the details. After you've completed your passage map, read the question stem. To determine the function, you'll usually have to go back to the passage and reread the surrounding lines. This does not mean you should reread the entire passage. Instead, focus on the overall why of the passage. Active reading will help you find the correct answer quickly and confidently. Let's take a look at how to approach a function question. The discussion of the time during which Landowska recorded the Goldberg variations, lines 5 to 9, is meant to. This question asks about the function of a detail, so the first step is to refer to your passage map. Since there's a line reference, go back to the passage and read the reference lines and some surrounding text. Ask yourself, why does the author mention the time she recorded the variations? Also, take a look at your passage notes. What is the first paragraph about? The student noted in her map, Baroque music wasn't popular, but Landowska revived it. The author mentions the variations to stress the significance of this accomplishment. Next, review the answer choices and determine which one matches your prediction. D closely matches the prediction and is the correct answer choice. Remember, read for the big picture. Focus on details only when directed to them by the questions. Once again, the Kaplan method will help you approach reading comp questions with confidence. Now it's your turn to practice answering function questions.